All right, hey there, my fellow coder. Welcome back to the FreshVotes series, where we are building a real-world Java web application from scratch, leveraging Spring Boot and other Spring and Hibernate technologies. In our previous video, we had set up the saving code to save to a database, which is wonderful. What we need to do still, well, we have lots to do, but in this video, we're going to dive into what happens when we do this redirect. So we redirect to /product/get the ID for the next product, so it actually returns an integer value. So /product/1/2/3. It redirects to here, or sorry, I should say here. My apologies, because it's going to products/product ID. This is a placeholder for a variable, which then gets resolved here. But what we're doing here is we're doing nothing. We're just returning the product view, which is the product HTML page, which just says, I think, product at the top. So there's nothing exciting that goes on. So to show you what happens currently, if for some reason you missed the previous video, let's take a look at that. Let's go to localhost 8080 and then login. And I think I changed my password to ASDF. Yes, I did. So if I go to /products, oops, that's not the home row for my fingers. If I go to /products/3, it just says product. So what it's doing here, /products/3 gets resolved to this URL because it's /products and then a long, or a number in here. So it resolves this product ID, gets turned into a 3 value because we passed 3 in the URL. But then we do nothing. We just return the product view. So this is where we need to do some more work. So when we take in the product ID, essentially what we're doing when we're going to this endpoint is we're saying we want to load a particular product with the ID of whatever ID we're talking about, right? So we want to load that product from the database and display it on screen. So we want to have the product details on this view, on this screen, related to whatever product we're loading. Okay, so in order to do that, we need to load that product from the database and then put it onto the model. So that's essentially exactly what we need to do. We need to do product repo dot, and then because we're leveraging Spring Data, we have all these wonderful functions, all these wonderful methods that we can use. One of which is, I believe, findById. Okay, so findById allows us to pass in an ID, and we have an ID. The ID we have is product ID, right? We have a product ID coming in, so we're going to try to find that product. Now, what this returns, this method returns an optional product. Optional is a wrapper class, sort of. It was introduced in, I believe, Java 8, version 8, and it just basically forces us to understand that this value could be null, okay, without having to deal with nulls, because null pointer exceptions are annoying. So this optional class was introduced in Java 8 to sort of help reduce the number of null pointer exceptions that are out there. So it forces us to say, hey, this potentially could return nothing. Okay, it could return an empty object. It could return an empty optional object. Or it could return an actual product. So this just forces us to deal with that case. So I'm going to do Control-2, and then hit L to automatically name. So it puts the equal sign, a random variable name, and then it shows the type. Okay, it's just a shortcut key to do some, output some code. So I'm going to change the ID. Instead of findById, I'm going to call it a product, because that's really what it is. But I'm also going to append OPT, okay, which that's something I do. I don't know if that's a convention out there. It probably is not a convention, so, take this with a grain of salt, I guess. But this just tells me this is the optional version, okay? So anyway, that's what I do. Hit enter. So product OPT will not give us the product, but it gives us these additional methods because it's an optional wrapper around the product, okay? So it gives us the .get, .or else, .isPresent, blah, 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 blah. So basically, we can say if it's present, then do something, right? We can say if it's present, then we can say product opt.get, which gets the actual product if there is one, and then that is the actual product that gets returned. And I can show you by doing the Control-2L again, it's assigning it to the name product, okay? Then we can put that product on the model. Oops, I need to bring in the model. Model map, model. So model.put, call it whatever we like as a key. We're going to put the actual product variable on the model. So we're not putting the product optional on the model. That's not helpful. We want to put the actual product on the model. And then we can return the product. So basically what this forces us to do is, if it's not there, if it cannot be found in the database, we now have an else statement that we can write here when it is not present. So what do we want to do when we cannot find the product? Okay, there's a whole bunch of things we can do. I shouldn't say a whole bunch. We can throw an exception. Okay, if we want to do that, we can say throw new, you know, not found exception or something like that. From, let's see, look at all these different things that have not found. I guess there's only two not found exceptions. Java assist. Sure, why not? We'll just do, which one sounds better? Do I want to throw, no, I just want to throw a message and say, you know, product with ID, you know, product ID was not found, or something like that, right? So that's something that we can do, and then we're going to need to say, hey, we're not handling this exception properly in our method here. Our method does not say that it handles exceptions, so we can just say add a throws declaration, which will add throws not found exception. So that just makes Java happy. So that's one way to handle that situation, and that's okay. But basically what's going to happen is, well, I'll show you what's going to happen on the front end. So my server just rebooted there. So if I go to products 3, well, it's going to ask me to log in probably, yeah. And if I go to products 3, what's going to happen is, boom, you see this this exception. Although this is a bit more beefy than I was expecting, but as you can see, it actually shows the entire stack trace. So I actually wasn't expecting the whole stack trace, but there you go. What you see here is our message, product with ID 3 is not found. And it's throwing a status of 500. So that's not the greatest. Really, the status that we want to return is probably 404, because 404 means not found. If ever you go to a website and you try to load something in a website that doesn't exist, it gives you a 404 error. That's more the speed I was looking for. So perhaps this not found exception is not ideal. Let's see, what else can we do here? Yeah, if this was a REST endpoint, I know how to handle this. We could create our own exception, but even then, again, I see why it's doing 500, because this gets resolved into a 500 exception because it was an error on the whatchamacallit side, on the Java side, server side. One other way that we can do this, and I wasn't planning for this, but this is the beauty of these programming sessions that I do with you on these series, is there's no prep work that I'm doing here. You're seeing how a real programmer's brain works in real time. Some people love it, some people hate it. If you hate it, there's plenty of other videos out there. If you love it, stick around. So this is sort of an approach I would do. I'd bring in the HTTP servlet response object, and this comes from JavaX package. So basically, when you do this, it will inject a response object into this method that we can mess around with. So why do I want to mess around with a response object? Well, I think I can set the status code, content type, length, header, set status. So we can actually set a status, and maybe even with a message. Can we set ambiguous meaning of message parameter, set an error code, because I kind of want to send, what's SM stand for? Yeah, message. Let's try this one. Okay. So oh no, it's deprecated. See, it showed us a line through it. I didn't realize it was deprecated. Set status. Can I do that one without, no, that one's deprecated. Oh no, there we go. It is not deprecated. So the SC stands for status code. So there's OK, temporarily moved, blah, blah, blah. Now, if I want to, I could just probably say 404, because I know that that's the status code that I want to return. Or we can leverage, in their example, there's probably like an object or an interface or something that has these constant values. So probably HTTP status dot not found. Would that work? No. Would I do dot ordinal? Yeah, so that should return like 404 for this one, right? So the ordinal value of this not found should be 404, I would believe, unless it's dot value. I don't know what the difference is between dot value. Return the that's actually what I want to do. I want to return the integer value of the status code. What is ordinal? Returns the ordinal of this. Yeah, actually that might not be right. That might give us like the number 1, number 2, number 3, number 4 in terms of where it is. So that's actually not what we want. We want the value. Yeah, because if you go into HTTP status codes, so the ordinal, there's a whole bunch here, right? The ordinal might have been like 1, 2, 3 type of thing, or 0, 1, 2, when really what we want is 100, 101, 102, that kind of thing. So that's why I chose value over ordinal. So if we say response status to that, and then maybe throw an exception, I'm not sure how that'll work, because again, like I said, I didn't prepare for this. So this is sort of what my brain would do. I would test this out and see if we can get a not found returned. Again, this is not critical. It's not critical that I return a 404, but I kind of want to. That's just a feeling that I have. So let me try that out because it rebooted my server. I'm still getting a 500, so that's not the way to do it. So can I set a message? Is there any way I can have a message? Contains header. Get status. I can send an error. Maybe I can send an error. I feel it. Can I do send error with this? And that's not deprecated? Okay, maybe that's the way I want to do it. So the status code is http status dot not found dot value. And the message is, ooh, I should have, let me copy this and go back to where I had the message itself and paste that back. I want to keep that message. Put it in here. And then remove that, send error, and that's not happy because why? Oh, I need to handle an IO exception, apparently. And let's get rid of not found exception because we're not using that one anymore. Send error, and then whenever we send an error, really we want to return. So let's say return product. I don't know if I need to return product or not here, but that is what I will do anyway. And I'll manually reboot my server. So basically what we're saying, the reason why I did a return here is because when we're saying response send error, we're sending the response back. So it's kind of like we are terminating whatever it is that we want to terminate, or we are terminating our fetch, right? We're doing a get, and then the get is returning. So once we're returning back to the view, we should stop anything else on the server side because we've already returned a response. Right, so we shouldn't do any additional processing. That'll make for wonky stuff. So we want to make sure that we stop our process, in which case I'm forcing it to return here. So let's try again. See if we can get that 404 status code. Beautiful. See, this is what I want. Not found, 404, here's the message. Now, I can almost hear you saying that this error page is not pretty, okay? And I agree with you. This is not a pretty error page. But what is good about this is I'm returning the status code that I expected. It is going to the correct endpoint that I expected. It's giving me the message that I expected. So now from here on out, all we really need to do here is do something to make these error pages look prettier. Okay, and that's totally doable. We can do that in another lesson. For now, let's keep it ugly because I want to get back to more productive things. Like, for example, when we don't pass in an invalid ID, I think product ID 2 exists. So if we say product ID 2, see, boom, it loads the product page. There's no error because product ID 2 does exist in our database. And I can prove that by going to our database and saying select star from product. So ID 1 and 2 exist, 3 does not. Okay, I don't know if you can see that. If I can make this bigger, I don't think I can make this text bigger. But product ID 1 and 2 exist. 3 does not. Okay, so cool. We are in a situation where we've got a little bit of the functionality that I wanted to see in here in terms of handling the exceptional circumstance where the product doesn't exist. But now I want to actually take that product on the model and do something with it. Okay, so let's see if I can just get this out before the video ends. Show something on this product screen to demonstrate that we have a product. So let's see, published, user ID, name, and ID. So for now, let's just grab the published data inside of the or the published column inside of the row that we're fetching, just to say whether or not the product is published. Okay, so let's do a div. Okay, and the div will have text, and we're going to do th text because we want to use Timeleaf to grab the values from the model. We need Timeleaf to do that when we're working on in an HTML page, as opposed to JSPs. Previously, JSPs were used to be able to grab stuff from the model and show it on the page. We use C, tag libraries, that kind of thing. And that was a bit messy. So that's why I'm getting away from using JSPs. I think working with plain old HTML is the better way to go. So I'm going to bring in Timeleaf, which is an XML namespace of th for Timeleaf, and we tell it where to get Timeleaf from, which is http://timeleaf.org. That way our th text, it understands what th text is when we do that. So before it was underlined with yellow with a warning saying, I don't know what this th thing is, or th text is. So now when we bring in th, it knows how to resolve that. So th text means take this div and dynamically replace the content of the div. In other words, what goes between the, saying here's the content of the div text. Basically what this does is th text will dynamically replace whatever's in here based on what we pass in when we're running in a server mode. If we're running without a server mode, it'll just show this. And anyway, that's the power of Timeleaf. I don't want to get into that right now. But anyway, I want to pull from the model the value that we placed on the model, which was product. Okay, so we placed the product on the model over here, right? So when we do find a product, we grab it from our optional wrapper and we put it onto the model and we call it product. Therefore, I'm saying pull the product, and more specifically, the product's published field, right? So I think published was, published, which comes from, if you go to the product object itself, the domain object, I'm looking at this value, which is a Boolean value of published. So we can just basically say, I'm gonna use some fancy bar syntax here. So when you put bars in, that allows me to write text along with pulling data. So I can say, without doing string concat, this is doing string concatenation without having all the pluses and stuff like that. So I can say, is product published? And then it'll say, well, it might say true or false, or it might say 0 or 1. I'm not sure how it resolves that. We'll see. So now let's go back and refresh this screen. And it says, is the product published? False. Right? So we're grabbing that from the database. So if I make this a bit bigger so you guys can see that, is product published? False. And if I go back and change product ID 2, so let me change product ID 2 to be published is 1. So I'll change that, and then I'll say apply, and it's going to run an update statement to change published to be a 1. Oops, what is this? Did I mess things up by hopping? There was an error applying update product set publishing where ID2 data is too long. Publish equals 1, where looks like it didn't put a space in there. That's odd. Okay, so let me revert. Let me just manually do that. Update product set published equal to 1, where ID equals 2. There you go. That's really weird. That's like a bug inside of Workbench for some reason. I've never, unless I put a space in there by accident, I'm not sure. Anyway, so now we have our data is set up. So let's go back to our web page and refresh. And now this should say true when I refresh. There you go, true. And if I go to product ID 1, it's going to load up product ID 1. And just to prove to you that it's actually loading product ID 1, this product is not published. Okay, this product 2 is published, and product ID 3 doesn't exist, right? We get that error code. Now, what the heck is this? We're going back to an error happened. Template class path, template product dot blah, blah, blah. An error happened. What was the error? Well, I guess I can go and look at the error in here. Maybe it's a property published cannot be found on null. Oh, okay. So we're actually, what happened is in here it tried to resolve, well, that's interesting. Maybe because I'm returning the product view, it tried to resolve this first. It tried to do a product.published first. So that's really interesting. I actually wasn't expecting that. I thought it would just have the error, but I guess that makes sense from a standpoint of we're actually returning product. So this is where I don't know if we should return product or not. Interesting. So, I mean, the one way to fix this is to do a wrapper around everything to say, how would I do this? If product, how would I say product exists? is not null, essentially. I wonder if that would work. There we go. So that fixed that in terms of this is the response I expected to see this. So in other words, what it's doing is it won't load the body at all, which is kind of weird. I wouldn't want it to not load the body. We need to load the body to have proper HTML. But maybe we could wrap all this stuff in a div like this. And I mean, since we're going to be eventually using Bootstrap. Bootstrap will most likely have a class container here anyway. So maybe we can say class equals container and then if, you know, and move this product equals null down 1. So, oops, I need to grab this. So basically what I'm doing here is I'm saying don't even render this div and everything inside of the div if the product is null. So if the product is not null, go ahead and render everything inside of this div as well as the div itself. If the product is null, then it won't render anything inside of this div. In other words, it'll leave the body as an empty body. Okay. So if I refresh that, same expected outcome, product ID 3 was not found, status 404. We go back to product ID 2. Product is published true, go to 1, product is published false. There we go. So that's sort of where we are right now in terms of our loading. But you can see how you can really handle this stuff however you want in terms of on the controller side. We can send an error, we can throw an exception, or we can maybe just return a dummy blank product too, right? If the product is not found, we can say, hey, you know, you can just say product equals new product, right? And then we can say put that on the model, you know, dot, not add all attributes, model dot put product as product, right? And then forget about all this stuff, comment this stuff out, and return that product, right? In which case we could extract these out because we're duplicating code and just move that down here. So that's another way to do it, right? We're putting an empty product on the model, and maybe we can handle it in that way as well. So that's another way to handle this situation, right? So there's many different ways to handle it. I think what makes the most sense is to actually return a not found, because that's kind of what's happening here. So there is a sort of we are in sort of an exceptional circumstance where we can't find it even though we're explicitly looking for it. So I think I'm going to roll this back and go back to what I had before, which was this, send error stuff, okay? It does make things a bit more complex on this end in that we need to have this if, but I think it's a little bit cleaner of a solution. But then that's just my opinion, right? So take that with a grain of salt if you like. So there you go. Fantastic. So basically in the next video, we're going to get into looking into when we actually have a product, and we're going to probably start making this page look prettier, bring in some Bootstrap, and allow us to save and rather update the product with more information. So the product name is null right now if you look in the database. Again, you might not be able to see this, but the name is null, so we want to be able to populate a name on this page. That's the purpose of this page, is to be able to populate new data or modify existing data inside of our product. So we'll do that. We'll bootify it, make it, or not bootify it, we'll what's the name of the framework I was just talking about? Bootstrap. Not Bootstrap. Is it Bootstrap? Oh my goodness. Yes. Get Bootstrap. So I guess it is sort of bootifying it, but then that's kind of saying Spring Boot. Anyway, I'm going off on tangents. So we're going to Bootstrapify it and actually allow us to edit the name of the product. Hopefully I can get through all of that in the next video in about 15 minutes if I can. So I look forward to seeing you there. As always, take care of yourself. Happy learning, and bye for now.